Chiquinha, Chiquinha.
Go check out the room.
Chiquinha.
Okay, I'm the content creator for this channel. If you like what I'm doing, just subscribe and then also hit the that little bell. That means you're gonna get notified of other videos that I do. Okay, so today I'm gonna be comparing Bogota and Havana. And basically, I just went there in May of 2019, so I'm going to be talking about my feelings, experiences in terms of safety, walkability, where to go. And before I even start, I just want to tell you where I was. So Bogota, I'm just going to highlight this area called Zona T. It's also called Zona Rosa. Chapinero is another neighborhood that people will say. So it's an area that is a place that people want to go. Basically, there's some bars and some clubs and some shopping malls, and it's all very walkable. So that's where I spent my time in Bogota. And then in Havana, O'Reilly Street. So I was in O'Reilly Street, which is there's a main pedestrian street right in there, and this is basically the old quarter. So there's a lot of density here. There's a street with some live music, Cuban music, some restaurants, and I'll also explain a little bit about that too. So today's goal is basically just to compare Havana and Bogota, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing video. So this video is from Havana. So basically what I'm going to be doing is talking about it while you're able to watch the video, and I'll also do this for Bogota too. This right here is basically the main street that's very walkable, and this is like one block over from O'Reilly. And it's a pedestrian street, so there's not many cars. The other streets you'll see lots of cars. And basically my goal is to talk about and compare these two cities, and you can also get a feel for it just by being able to feel like you're walking in the same spot that I was. I put a camera around my chest, so when you're seeing exactly what I was seeing when I was walking around. I'm going to be talking about a couple different things, and I'll also show footage when I was walking around Bogota as well. One thing about Cuba, Havana, is that I felt pretty safe. When I was walking around, I think I heard that there was some spots that you should not go to, but I didn't go to those places, so I basically was where all the tourists were at. And probably the worst that I got was that, people were being opportunistic. That meant that they would try to maybe get me to go to some cigar factory or try to go to some restaurant, and they'd get a commission. I think you could probably do that and probably be safe. I didn't actually follow through with anybody. I didn't, like, sometimes there was somebody that was like, oh, go up to this restaurant and it's up here, over there, and it's like, like, I don't need to save $1 to go to some place where I don't have a view and I can't see anything. So I would just ignore them or say, like, no gracias, it's all right. So instead, what I would just do is I just walk down this street right here, and there was maybe about 6 or 7 places. Actually, this whole area is probably like at least a dozen or a couple dozen or more places with live music, and I could just see it right on the street. And I would just go in, and I'd eat my meal, and it'd be $5, $6, $7. So I felt pretty comfortable everywhere I went in Havana. I didn't go everywhere, of course, but in the tourist areas, which was this entire area called the Old Quarter. You can see some little tourist shops in here too. One of the funny things about Havana, which I'll compare it with Bogota, Bogota is a lot more, it's capitalistic. So I went into shopping malls and places like that, where in Havana there are no shopping malls. There's a small place that looks a little bit like one, but it's really small and not a shopping mall at all. And basically a lot of these things are just kind of artisan shops, just locals just make things and then try to sell them. So they're not really by a corporation usually. I mean, not that I'm aware of. There might be some cigar factories, I'm sure, that are kind of acting like one, or acting like a factory, I guess. And basically at nighttime, sometimes I felt like a lot of times Cuban people, they don't have any money to go out, so they'll just drink a beer out on the street. So sometimes I'd see a lot of people drinking beer, when it hit like 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And they were a little bit talkative, but I didn't feel threatened at all. They were always kind of like, I think sometimes they'd see the foreigner and like, oh, okay, maybe I can make $1 or $2 by, so if they were out there drinking beer, they might be a little bit more like, hey, come on over to the shop or whatever. But I didn't really feel like in any kind of threat or anything like that. I'm going to stop this footage right here of Havana, and I'm just going to go to some of the Bogota footage. Okay, so the Bogota footage, you can see some of this. If you're one of those people that flips back and forth, you can see that I have the Bogota, Colombia written in the left corner, and then the other one it has Havana. So you can always see which one I'm at if you do want to flip around and just kind of see visually. Bogota was completely different than Havana. I felt safer in Havana. Bogota was like, it felt like there was a little bit more. Because I'm just going to use the capitalistic system, like there's more haves and have-nots, so I kind of felt like the desperation was higher, like maybe some of the people might not have homes, that are kind of begging, or, different issues, mentally ill, homeless, where it felt like in Havana, everybody maybe had a home. Like if people seemed a little bit homeless, maybe it was like severe mental illness issues, like I don't, for some reason I just felt different. So Bogota felt fine in the daytime, and there's actually security in both cities. So when I was walking around, there's lots of people with guns. Especially Bogota was usually around the malls, and in Havana it was where all the tourist industry is at. And I definitely saw a lot more tourism in Havana. I didn't see so much in Bogota at all. Actually, I think I might have been. That was the only foreigner that I saw. I mean, there might have been others, but I wasn't aware of them. I also might not have been in the right area for that too. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know where the tourists go in Bogota. Basically in this area there was some nightlife stuff as well. And one of the things I noticed is that in the daytime when I walked by the certain mall, I'd get kind of a bunch of people would come at me trying to shine my shoes, which is fine, but they were kind of designated in one area. But if I wandered around a little too far, then it felt like I was out of the police watching zone. It felt that way. So I just felt like I had to be really aware of what street I was going down, basically. But I just kind of bounced back and forth with a lot of these malls in this area. So once I was in there, they had heavy security with dogs, and then it was 100% fine. But then as soon as you walk out in the street, and there's also a lot of Venezuelans around, so they were homeless and hungry, and a lot of times with family, and they were actually very harmless. Like they were just generally in need. So, but they usually identify themselves with some kind of Venezuelan hat or shirt with a flag color on it, or the flag wrapped around as a bandana. So they were actually pretty easy to identify, and they were kind of very sincere. But then at nighttime, a lot of times I'd see these other guys, and sometimes they made me kind of nervous because they were always chicas, 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 girls. And they would just kind of surround you real quick, all of a sudden be 3 or 4, it's sheesh, I don't need 3 or 4 guys, trying to lead me to chicas, because I don't know what kind of scam that is, they might just try to get you down some alley, or maybe they have a legitimate establishment they take you to, but then they're going to fleece you, you just don't really know where they're coming at. But then I also noticed that some of the locals, Colombian men, would be walking down the street, and then they'd surround, one of them would come up and run up to them and chica chicas, and then they'd be oh, let me see your card. So if the Colombians, but to me it didn't really make any sense because, there's it's a society where men and women can socialize together anyway. So it's not like there's no bars where there's 100% only men. It's not Saudi Arabia. So I didn't really understand fully why these people were chasing me down the street, with little cards that said chicas all the time. So as soon as it hit evening, it was just kind of full on like that. This street right here, there were some people on the left, and they were kind of selling things. There's lots of there's some artisans left, here in different places, and some of these bars, to the left, there was one, and then you can see these bars to the left too. So a lot of times, people when they would socialize, kind of inside outside, they would have either bars or sometimes these glass windows, and actually I felt I kind of felt like I needed that because it seems like the crime. I didn't see any crime there, but I just kind of felt like there was people that were very aware of who's who and where's where. Because sometimes I'd go into another place, a certain place, and people would come off the street asking for something, asking for money or something. So I never felt 100% safe in Bogota, especially at nighttime, and even the daytime. I felt like I had to keep it in check of where I wanted to go. I was actually with a good friend of mine. Another is an American male, so him and I drank some beer and hung out a little bit. And then there was one evening where we were drinking a little bit late. It was 1 o'clock, and the hotels were within a block or two of where we're drinking at, because I wanted to stay in a safe area where I could just get back quick. So I think one of those nights was like 1:30, and I was with my friend, and like, yeah, that was when I had like 5 or 6 guys surrounding me like chicas, chicas, and I was like, no, 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 no gracias, no gracias, no gracias. And my friend kind of lingered back a little bit, like I think he was kind of trying to assess it, and I was still moving forward. And then I kind of felt like I got through that little group. They're just hanging on the corner, and then I turned around, and like all of them are like right with me, and it's like, man, like they could have turned on me so quickly, like just it's like 1:30 in the morning, and hardly anybody. There's people around because it's a nightlife area, but there's a guy selling watches right there. A lot of people selling different stuff everywhere in Bogota. And a lot of people are just normal people, but I felt like I had to say no gracias quite a bit. Also, I have 2 different versions of this video. So I have one where I just have the sights and sounds. So if you just want to hear everybody talking, like you can see this girl right here was like, I think she's maybe a student. She wanted me to do an interview. There's another guy selling watches again. The street has some shoe shiners. There's other people on the side. They're making music, trying to busk a little bit. And I think that guy probably asked, well, maybe not. I think sometimes when I walk by them, they ask me for money as well. This guy on the right was selling something. This guy's sitting down, might have been a shoe shiner. Let's get closer to him. Maybe he was just sitting there on his phone. But basically in the Bogota, you just kind of had to say no gracias quite a bit. I had to as well in Havana, but in Havana I just felt like they were just on to the next tourist real quick. And in Bogota they were on to the next Colombian, because they were actually asking a lot of Colombians too for shoe shine or whatever they were trying to do. So basically that's kind of how I felt the differences between safety. I think in general, if you're kind of worried about safety, I think Havana was a better place to walk around because the police were there, and I just felt like things just seemed a little bit more in control. I felt like in Havana too, like everywhere I went where there was tourists, there was always tourist police or police people, and sometimes I got lost. I didn't know any English, but they would help me out a little bit. Bogota didn't. I saw policemen, but they were usually at the door. So I'm going to be walking into this mall in this video in a minute, and you can see some security with a big dog. I think, or maybe I go around. In this particular one, I think I go around to the side, so maybe you won't see the big dog. I went into this shopping mall a few times, and they're all recorded. So yeah, again, actually, I have some videos called Havana Sights and Sounds and Bogota Sights and Sounds, and walking around Bogota, walking around Cuba. So if you want to hear it with all the people who are trying to say things to me, you can, and it's kind of interesting. But if you just kind of want to hear about my experience there, this video is good. So basically, that's kind of the safety one, and also we'll talk about food. In general, the food in Bogota was very great. I could find almost everything, especially in the shopping malls and the restaurants. There's just a lot of them, and so I made the transition from Havana to Bogota. So it was so in Havana I was actually kind of stuck with food. There wasn't a lot of options. I would see food that was sometimes like home cooked by some casa particular, like a house, somebody's home, and they would put a little sign up trying to sell food. So you could find food in Havana, but it was usually pretty basic. But what I had in Havana I liked, but I saw a lot of other tourists didn't like it at all, especially when I read it online. A lot of it is rice with beans, or rice and beefsteak, or rice and beefsteak and French fries. But a lot of that was also in Colombia too. But in Colombia it was like a lot more processed, I guess processed meaning like it was like more glittery and more fresh looking and things like that. I guess Havana, like everything is basically from somebody's house, and even stuff in the bars, like sometimes they'd run out of stuff, like it wasn't always available. But I felt like it was like it didn't have that glittery, glistening kind of feel, but it was always very tasty. Like I thought it was pretty good. I really liked the food that I had in Cuba. I always went to the places that had Cuban live music, and I spent maybe $6 or $7 American dollars on a meal, sometimes no more than 10. And so I think a lot of times maybe foreigners in Cuba were kind of, actually I'm going to go to some of my Cuba footage, just so you have a little bit of back and forth. Okay, so we go back to the Havana footage, and so basically food was definitely much better in Colombia. It's much better in most places, but the food that I had in Cuba, I quite liked it quite a bit. Also want to talk about the people as well. The people since you can see the Havana footage, you can see some tourists walking around for sure. And then when you see the Cuban people, I kind of thought they were really interesting because there was a mix of some Cubans are black, some are white. Some of the whites actually have like blonde hair or like very fair skin, and they could still be Cuban. Some had like a black-haired, white skin, which was pretty common as well, which was more common than the ones with light hair. I think these girls right here, they're probably Cuban, possibly on the left side. It's hard to tell sometimes. They could be tourists as well, but a lot of Cubans look like especially in the people you see on the side, like on the left side, kind of along the wall. Those are probably Cubans. And but a lot of Cubans, they're like a whole spectrum of different people. So like the people were really interesting in Cuba, and they were really like good people. Like what I mean by that is like they were just, I think because they don't watch, they seem like they're more in the street in a positive way where they're interacting with people. They kind of know each other and they go down to the park and socialize and hang out. They'll drink a beer up on the stoops, or they'll just be kind of enjoying music. They can't really go into the places where foreigners are at. They could, but they don't have any money because there's a different system. So basically for a foreigner, we have to get something called kooks, and then the kook is equivalent to dollars, but their currency is just a fraction of that. So they couldn't really go to the same places and spend that kind of money. So a lot of times they would kind of linger around. There's definitely a lot of Cubans in this park right here to the right. But if there was like a live music thing, they'd be kind of maybe dancing just outside. They're basically they're just like outside of the venue, but the music is the same if you're sitting inside eating or if you're standing outside. So I noticed that a lot, and nobody would come by and shoo them away. They weren't like harassing anybody. They were like fine, or like good human being people. So basically I just kind of noticed there was more of a black, white mix of everybody in between, but definitely black and white as well, where it's not like Dominican Republic where they're like thoroughly mixed, where everybody is kind of a mixed, there was like definitely people that genetically had always been Spanish or, whatever. Anyways, like Cuba had, I like the people in Cuba were really interesting. And then when I was in Bogota, like the look of the people there was like some of them were kind of mestizo. Mestizo means like indigenous mixed with Spanish Caucasian. But a lot of them seemed very Spanish looking, like more Caucasian with a little bit of indigenous in them. So there's like the country of Colombia, there was definitely Africans, especially on the coastline, but I didn't see that many in Bogota really. They were like very few and far between, where in Cuba, it seemed like they were more integrated in the city more or something like that. It was like more presence of different kinds of Cuban people, where I think in Bogota it was like a little bit more Caucasian, mestizo, and you'd see some that were maybe indigenous or African, but not very often. But then when I went to Cartagena later, it was more of a had more African influences, but it wasn't really like it was African at all. It was just kind of like more African Colombian people with a lot of mixed blood, basically. That's the only way I can say it. And so Cuba was pretty interesting. This right here to the right is one of these live music places, and if you go to my other video, you can listen to the music, what they're playing. I think I just kind of go in here and sit down, and then I watch a little bit in here, and then I think they stop playing not long after I sit down. And but anyways, this is the kind of stuff that's in Havana. So I'm going to go back to the Bogota just so you can get a sense of that as well. Okay, so we're back in Bogota again in the video, and right here I'm walking out of a mall. So I just kind of take a look at the people. You can see, actually when I was in Bogota, pretty much everybody was Colombian. I don't think I saw or overheard any foreigners. But basically, yeah, you can see a little bit more Caucasianness compared to Havana. Let me cut off some of that sound. Okay, so I just cut off the sound, and maybe you could hear some horns honking. Sound is kind of interesting too, but it's also maybe a little bit distracting if I'm talking as well. This guy's trying to shine my shoes. To the right, Zara. So that's kind of one of the things about Bogota. There's a lot of high-end, all the different shopping malls that you can get. Like all that stuff is there, and these are the streets right here. So basically, I guess I covered maybe safety feel, food, people. I think those are maybe the three main things that most people would be curious about to compare the cities. If you were going to be a tourist, I think probably Havana has more tourist things to see and do. It's more tourist oriented. The Cuban music is more tourist oriented, in a good way. Like it's not like you're captive on a cruise ship and you're only going to be with only tourists. You know, you're actually walking in the streets with mostly all Cubans, and then you go into the restaurant and it's foreigners that are with their video cameras or whatever. Bogota is more like the living experience. There's a guy with a dog, and I'm walking into the malls. So basically, if you like shopping malls and things that are more structured in a more familiar way, then of course Bogota is going to be that kind of place for you. And if you kind of like if you like walking around in the streets and kind of being among the people but still feeling quite safe about it in general, you know, like that would be Havana. Bogota, I felt like I needed to go more into the shopping malls, just because I could feel like I had, 100% security, or I just wasn't 100% sure. When you're walking around, sometimes there was just too many people just, coming at you sometimes when they'd see you. Not in a horrible way, not like later I go to Cartagena and you'll see people kind of constantly, because that's a more tourist city and Bogota's not. So it wasn't that bad in Bogota, to be honest. It wasn't like what I'll talk about when I talk about Cartagena. So anyways, I hope you kind of get a sense for the two cities and comparing it a little bit. I don't know what everybody's purpose is when they travel, but those are my experiences with those three things. If you were to ask me which one I would go back to, out of these two, I would say Havana. I thought Havana had something really unique and interesting, which was worth experiencing, whereas Bogota, I felt like I could go to different cities, Mexico City or Costa Rica or Peru or some different other places too, or even other cities in Colombia, and I'd rather just go to have a different experience, because I can also see a lot of the same stuff that I'm seeing right here in these shopping malls, stuff like that. So anyways, I hope that's kind of interesting for you to be able to see both the two cities, and I'm just going to cut back to Havana real quick. Okay, so and also before I go, I just want to say, if you think this video is interesting or you like it, make sure that you comment below. Just write something. It puts the video in the algorithm so other people can come across it and find it as well. If people don't like it or comment it, then it means other people just won't see it. And so if you think it's worth seeing or worth listening to, definitely just write a comment. Maybe just say, I preferred this one, or I want to go to this one, or I kind of liked what you said. Or if you want to disagree with it, it's fine too. I don't mind that at all. People should read it and see other people's opinions as well. So yeah, definitely do that. But definitely try to comment or write or type something, and like it if you like it. It'll be good to get it more in the algorithm. And I have lots of other videos too, so if you just want to see other stuff in Bogota, Havana. Also in this same trip, I also go to Cartagena and Mexico City and Costa Rica, so I'll be putting all those up too, and I'm going to try to do some comparisons with some of those cities as well. So all right, hope you enjoyed this one with Bogota versus Havana. And we'll close right here.
Chiquinha, chiquinha.